What happens when a boss, revered for his success and wealth, steps into the shoes of an ordinary worker? What if the very world he built with his hands is on the verge of falling apart? Let's dive in to see the emotional journey of a leader who discovers the cost of his own ambition and the harsh reality faced by the people who built his empire. It was an early morning when Jacob Monroe, the CEO of Monroe Construction, decided to step away from his corner office and into the grit and grind of his own business. Jacob had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, building an empire in construction. He had grown the company from a modest startup to one of the most prominent names in the industry. But something was missing. His employees, the ones who worked hard every day on the ground, seemed distant to him, just names on a payroll. Jacob had always prided himself on his leadership, but as he sat in his luxury car watching his men work from a distance, he realized that something wasn't right. It had been a while since he had connected with his crew, and deep down, he felt a yearning to understand their struggles, their fears, their lives beyond the paycheck. He couldn't help but wonder, were they really as happy as he thought they were? Was the company truly as safe as he had always assumed? So Jacob decided to go undercover. With a hard hat and a dusty work uniform, Jacob walked into the construction site of one of his flagship projects. He introduced himself as Jake, a new worker looking to make a fresh start. No one suspected who he really was. They were all too busy, too focused on their own work, to notice the man who stood among them, trying his best to blend in. He immediately struck up a conversation with some of the laborers. There was Dale, a seasoned worker who had been with the company for years. Dale was tough on the outside, but Jacob could tell there was something more beneath the surface. "You new around here?" Dale asked, eyeing Jacob skeptically. "You don't look like the type to be working with your hands." Jacob chuckled, doing his best to keep the mood light. "I've been around a few jobs before, just looking to see how things work on the ground." As they talked, Jacob's attention was drawn to the chaos around him. Workers were using equipment without proper safety gear. Scaffolding was precariously leaning against walls, and the air was thick with dust. But the real shock came when he saw a group of workers loading heavy beams onto a truck with no signs of coordination or safety measures. One misstep, and there could be a disaster. A tightness gripped Jacob's chest. He had known the company's safety policies. He had approved the budgets. He had authorized the cuts in safety measures to save a few dollars. The safety gear had always been an afterthought, but seeing it firsthand was a different story entirely. Jacob felt a pang of guilt. He had been so focused on profits, so obsessed with numbers, that he had ignored the well-being of the people who were the backbone of his success. The day went by in a blur of discomfort. Jacob worked alongside the crew, doing his best to keep up with their grueling pace. But then it happened. He was carrying a load of bricks with another worker when he slipped on the uneven ground. The load of bricks fell from his hands and struck him on the leg. A sharp pain shot up his body. He could barely stand. One of the workers, Alex, rushed over to help him. "Are you all right, man?" Alex asked with genuine concern, helping Jacob to his feet. Jacob winced, trying to hide his pain. "I'll be fine. Just a little shaken up." Alex didn't hesitate. He supported Jacob to the makeshift first aid station, where the site medic bandaged his leg. Jacob's mind raced. How had he not seen the hazards before? The crew had worked like this day in and day out, without any real protection or safeguards. And here he was, a privileged CEO, never once stepping into their shoes. "Alex, how often does this happen?" Jacob asked quietly, his voice hoarse with guilt. "Every other week, it seems." Alex replied, his voice heavy with resignation. "But the bosses don't care. They say it's not in the budget." The words hit Jacob like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about numbers or safety protocols. It was about lives, lives that were being sacrificed for the sake of profit. Jacob's heart sank. The next morning, Jacob woke up with a newfound clarity. His leg throbbed, but it was nothing compared to the weight he now carried in his chest. He realized that he had to do something big, something that would change the course of the company. He had been part of the problem, and now it was time to make things right. He called an emergency meeting with his senior team. As they gathered around the conference table, Jacob stood up, his eyes filled with determination. "Listen to me," he began, his voice firm. "For too long, we've been putting profit over people. We've ignored the safety of our workers to save a few dollars. That ends today." The room fell silent. His colleagues were shocked, unsure of how to react. But Jacob continued. "I've seen the consequences firsthand," he said, his voice cracking. "I've experienced it myself. I've walked in their shoes, and I won't stand by while lives are put at risk for the sake of margins. We are going to overhaul our safety protocols. We are going to invest in our people. We will not sacrifice their well-being any longer." His team exchanged uncertain glances, but Jacob's resolve was unwavering. The truth had been laid bare before him, and now he had a responsibility to act. Weeks passed, and the changes Jacob promised slowly began to take shape. The safety measures were upgraded, and the workers received proper training and equipment. The company invested heavily in the workforce, ensuring that they were treated with the respect they deserved. The transformation was not immediate, and there were challenges along the way. Some workers were skeptical, and there were growing pains as the new policies were implemented. But slowly, trust began to rebuild. The workers, once disengaged and disheartened, began to see that their boss cared about them, not just their labor, but their lives. And Jacob learned an invaluable lesson. Leadership wasn't just about making decisions from an office. It was about understanding the people you led. It was about stepping into their world, seeing the challenges they faced, and having the courage to do what was right, even when it wasn't easy. Jacob Monroe would never forget that day. The day he went undercover, the day he got injured, and the day he realized the cost of his own ambition. It was a painful journey, but it was also the most rewarding one of his life. Sometimes it takes a fall to see the truth, and in that truth, there's the chance for real change. The twists in Jacob's journey were not just about discovering safety violations on his construction site. They were about confronting the truth of his own guilt, realizing the sacrifices he had made, and then taking the painful steps to correct them. His story is a reminder that leadership is not just about profits, it's about people. And when you put people first, everything else will follow. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.